jump in and cool. I'm going to jump in and talk about what this talk is about, and then tell you a little bit about myself and what I do as well. So what is this talk about? This talk is, it introduces new grads and junior software engineers like yourself to things that can help you add value to your future teams, build relationships, and supercharge your career from your first week when you start your full-time job. It's geared towards software engineers. You could extend most of these concepts to even if you're a hardware engineer, or if you're in software testing and those adjacent fields to software development. Career development, like any other undertaking, is something that you mindfully plan and continuously work on. And usually it takes a few years for engineers to grasp this and completely get in tune with this. So I've put together this talk that'll give you a leg up and put a framework in place on how you can start thinking about these things right as you join the workforce. Cool. So a little bit about myself and what I do. So I work at Splunk. Splunk is an enterprise software company. So Splunk sells its products and softwares and services to other companies. So it's a business-to-business company. And we help other companies process their machine data in terms of logs and metrics and traces for security, IT, and business needs. It's a publicly traded company, and I have been at the company for more than 8 years at this point. I love working there. I love the people. At Splunk, I am a senior manager, and I run the developer ecosystem engineering organization. So my organization is split into 4 teams, and we are responsible for everything right from enabling and empowering app developers to build apps on top of Splunk's platforms, to giving them a marketplace that they can list their apps on. Customers can go in and download those apps and get value from those apps as well. That's what I do in a day-to-day operational capacity. As a manager, one of my favorite parts is mentoring, or being able to mentor engineers. Most of the time, these are engineers that are in my organization, and help them advance their career by putting them in places that in situations where they can grow their career and learn new things. And over the years, I have been able to distill some of those concepts and create a little framework that I'm about to share with you. Feel free to type out questions in the Q&A forum. Alper is also going to open it up for being able to raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask questions toward the end. And I'll be able to look at the questions. I have them open here, and I want it to be interactive. We are all here to learn today. Cool. So these are the 5 things that I am going to talk about today. Showing up, learning company values, finding a mentor, showing ownership, the concept of developing breadth versus developing depth, and how do you stay in tune with the bigger picture at all times. And the way I have classified or categorized these things is in 0 to 3 months, 3 to 9 months, and then 9 to 12 months. So when you start your new job, which is probably going to be your first job for some of you on the call, many of you may have had prior internship experience. So what do you want to do in the first 3 months? What do you want to do subsequently in the next 3 to 9 months? And then, sort of like 9 months and beyond. And again, these lines and these markers are somewhat fuzzy. So nothing changes, obviously, as you can imagine, in your 4th month compared to your 3rd month. So jumping right into it, what does showing up mean? It's such a fundamental thing, yet it's often and sometimes overlooked, really. You want to show up. You always want to show up to work. Obviously, needless to say, you want to show up to work. You want to show up for meetings. You want to show up for all hands. All hands, for those of you who don't know, are a special kind of meeting that is typically called by your direct manager, by their manager, all the way up to the CEO of a company. And many times, people and engineers, decide to skip these meetings, what I'm recommending is that you show up for everything that you get invited to. You want to show up for code reviews that your peers put together, where they want to share their screen and just talk about a specific section of the code that they've written. You want to show up for demos, even if it's demos for different teams. You want to show up for team outings, parties, volunteer opportunities, which are extended team outings in some cases. You always want to show up, and there are always going to be a bunch of things that stop you from showing up. It could be insecurity, it could be underconfidence, it could be just laziness. I went through this when I was early in career myself, but you have to conquer this, and you have to get out of your comfort zone, and you want to start attending things. If you know something is happening and you're not invited to it, don't assume that you're intentionally being left out. Seek an invitation, go talk to people and ask them for an invitation. Most likely what's going to be happening is you're not going to be added to all the various distribution lists and mailing lists that you should be a part of when you join a company. So no one is trying to leave you out intentionally. It's probably an oversight. The moment you learn about something, you want to plug in, you want to get invited to it. Showing up so why is it important? Because it puts you in front of people, and you always learn something. Even today, when I show up to things, I learn something, I meet somebody new, I build relationships. You can't build relationships and you can't network with people if you don't show up. So this is probably the most important step. Once you master this, and once this becomes a part of your habit, or part of how you work and how you approach work, you can take it you can take the next step, which is showing up prepared. So you want to always do your homework. You want to see who's going to be attending a given meeting that you have been invited to. What's the content of that meeting? Are you going to be participating in that meeting? All those sort of things. That's not something you need to worry about for the first 3 months, though. In the first 3 months, you want to practice showing up, and then hopefully continue that for the rest of your career. Cool. So that's the first one. Another thing that you should try to do in the first 90-ish days of joining a new company is to learn core company values. Now, this is not something that you will find anywhere, and you might even see people scoffing at company values when they're published somewhere. It's just big, lofty sounding words. But I want to tell you why it is important to learn what your company's values are. Corporate values are typically set out by the co-founders when they found a company. In larger companies, they're set by the leadership team, which is the E-staff and the execs that run the company. These values really reflect the stance of a company that you're, of whatever employer or whatever company that you're going to be a part of. They describe what the company holds near and dear. They describe how the company approaches its business. And they're really deeply ingrained principles that guide all of companies' actions, if you think about it. They also serve to really set the company's culture and how people interact with one another. Some companies want you to take risks. Other companies want you to really obsess over customers. Amazon is a really good example of a company that one of its values is customer obsession. So you want to, if you're going to work at Amazon, you want to work on projects that put the customer front and center. Or you want to, another way to think about it is whatever project you are working on, you want to shape it such that it impacts customers. And that is, again, something that will help you advance in your career. If you know any company values, or if you know the values of a company that you're going to be joining, or of a company that you really like, put them in the chat. And we can talk about it a little more.
So we don't quite have a chat, but you guys can put it in the Q&A and it can function as a chat.
Oh,
Or
perfect.
you
Yeah.
can raise
Thanks,
your hand
Alper.
too, and I can let you guys talk. So no worries. Sorry about that.
Yeah. 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 Put it in Q&A, and we can have a conversation about it at the end of it. Don't be surprised or discouraged if you're one of the only few people, who's talking about company values, depending on the size of the company. If it's a small startup, values are pretty forefront, or they're almost unspoken because you can observe what the values are and what the company's culture is. If you join one of the tech giants, you may be one of the only people, that's sort of like being in tune with the values, and that's fine. You don't have to go about preaching the company's values to anyone who listens. You just want to internalize them and have your work reflect the company's values. And that's a really good way to, just get noticed by people higher up the chain. Uh, Splunk has a set of values as well, and two of the values that I really like with Splunk are innovation and disruption. So every time somebody does something innovative, or if they do something disruptive, it always has a way of getting noticed, even if it's by a hackathon, or even if it's a sprint demo or what have you. And I've always seen people who adhere to company values become successful in their careers. So the first 0 to 3 months are a really good time to, sort of spend a couple of hours reading on this, finding them, talking to people. These are also really good. They can also be used for framing really good questions if you get a chance to talk to senior leaders of your company. And as newcomers to a company, you will probably have an opportunity to ask questions to senior leadership. There might be some sort of a lunch and learn. There might be a new hire orientation where one of the execs show up, and you can sort of have a nice question based on a certain value that the company holds near and dear. Cool. So moving on, the next thing that I want to touch upon is finding mentors at your workplace. And you don't want to confuse this with an onboarding mentor or an onboarding buddy that you may be assigned when you initially join. This onboarding mentor is probably going to be somebody who is on the same team, who's probably going to be not all that senior compared to you, and they're going to show you and teach you the ropes, and that's fine, and that's great, and you need that in order to be operationally successful. But once you're fully settled in the first year or so of your career, you want to go ahead and you want to find a mentor, somebody who can really watch out for you, somebody who can give you career advice, and somebody who can whom you can lean on. You want to have somebody who has been doing this for a number of years, like at least 5 to 7 years. So you want to have somebody senior. And here's the fun part: senior people are also, or senior engineers, or managers or product manager, what have you, are also looking out for opportunities to mentor other people, but they can't approach you. You can't go up to somebody who's like, "Hey, can I be your mentor?" But if you ask them to be a mentor, you have very good chances that they're going to agree to that. So don't be shy. Just go ahead and be like, "Hey, I really respect what you do here. I really like what you do here. Are you open to mentoring me?" And then if they agree, then it's upon you to set up time on their calendar. I would recommend meeting them anywhere between once or twice a month, no more than twice a month, because then that's going to be a drain on their time. Once a month is a really good cadence to settle down into, because you also want to have multiple mentors. You don't want to have just one. You want to have like 2 or 3 different mentors from different disciplines, or people that bring different strengths. You could have one that could that's an excellent communicator. You could have somebody who's who's very senior in their field, and they probably just have time to meet you once every 3 months, and that's fine too. Not only will this enable you to learn valuable skills, it's a very powerful tool to network with people who are already established in the industry. Once you form that mentor-mentee relationship, it will persist beyond this company that you're working for. When the mentor leaves the company, when you leave the company, what have you, it has a way of persisting and sustaining beyond just that initial time frame. And you should always do this, right? This is not just for like 3 to 9 month mark. This is a good point in your career to get started with. But I still have mentors, right? And most people whom I know who have been in the workforce for 20, 30 years also have mentors. So it's a lifelong thing, or it's a career long thing, really. So Mohammed has a question. What are some examples to talk about in a meeting with a mentor? That's a great question. Let's circle back to that because I do want to finish the content that I have. That's a good one. Next up, you want to show ownership. And this is something that you'll be able to do once you're fully onboarded and once you're in the swing of things. This is not something that you can do in the first 6-ish months, right? So allow yourself time before you start showing this. You want to find your team's blind spots by keeping an eye out for things that seem broken, or things that others are maybe not as enthusiastic about doing, and you want to sign up for that. As the younger junior person, you want to just go in and you want to jump in and you want to show ownership. These things may be tedious, they may involve toil, and what you want to do is you want to automate it. You want to find out ways, hey, how do I really put my thinking cap on, and how do I want to solve this problem as an engineer would solve this problem? So maybe you want to write some scripts, maybe you want to write a program, maybe you want to enhance the capability of a product that reduces the tedious nature of this particular thing, or reduces manual toil, what have you. Documenting things is another great area that oftentimes teams just don't have sufficient time to document everything that they would like to document. So if you go in and if you start documenting things, everyone's going to love it. It's like the person that brings guacamole to a party. It's like, hey, this person is really good at documenting things. So for example, when you go through your onboarding in your developer environment setup, just look at the document, and if you see any things that have fallen out of sync, just go in and update those things, or fix little things. Another thing to keep in mind for this particular one is when don't be afraid to raise your hand when the team is looking for volunteers to take on new projects. So it could be taking notes in a meeting, or scheduling a series of meetings, or like finding time on somebody's calendar, and just being accepting of if anyone is looking to delegate a task, just go in and take it up and deliver on that. Excuse me. It's also important to actually deliver what you're signing up for. So if you're not sure that you'll be able to deliver on something, then don't sign up for it. It's perfectly fine to not do this if you're not confident. Only do this if you're 100% sure that you're going to be able to do it. It's worse to sign up for something and then not do it, instead of just not signing up in the first place. Cool. Breadth versus depth. And so this is the second last thing that I want to touch upon here, is when you're early in career. So like as you're approaching the first year of your career, you would have been able to have a good grasp of everything that your team does. Would have probably shipped some features in front of customers, and it's almost tempting to really just keep continuing with that momentum, and just developed a very specialized depth in that particular thing that you have started doing as a part of this new job. And it's important to be mindful, excuse me. It's important to be mindful that you also want to focus on the breadth, the technical breadth, for the first few years of your career. So you don't want to compartmentalize yourself into a a very specialized skill so early on in your career, because you're going to miss out on the full spectrum of technical challenges that our industry and our field is able to afford engineers. Eventually, you want to be a specialist at something, but that shouldn't be for the first several years of your career. Uh, I've listed out some examples of engineering, sub-disciplines, if you will, that you should familiarize yourself with. So there's obviously back-end engineering and front-end engineering, but then there's also systems and DevOps, which is a combination of development and operations. There's tooling, there is continuous integration, continuous delivery, that's CI/CD. There is security-focused programming, there is distributed systems, databases, networking, those sort of things. So you want to try to experience as many of these as you can, but probably not going to be experienced. You're probably not going to be able to experience everything, but at least try for 3 or 4 of these. And my earlier point of not going too deep into a particular thing. So for example, if you join a database team, it might be a really good chance to reflect upon what you have learned after your first year and make sure you don't be a database engineer for the next 5 years of your career just because you joined a database team to begin with. And you probably have no way of knowing, whether or not you're going to like something unless you have tried your hand at all of these various disciplines. So you want to focus on breadth. Excuse me, there's something stuck in my throat. Cool. And this is the last point I have. You always want to keep an eye on the bigger picture. So you want to keep an eye on the horizon. You want to see where the company is headed. You want to see how your work fits in and how does it impact the top line of the company or the bottom line of the company, how it impacts the customers and the users. Some companies these days, most companies, in fact, will use various frameworks to determine what is the entire engineering team working on. So objectives and key results is a framework that we use at Splunk, and it's used by most companies here in the Bay Area as well. So, familiarize yourself with, what are the top level objectives that the CEO or like the engineering leader has set for the entire engineering department, and understand what your slice of work ties into that. The more you understand directionally where you're headed, the better chances you have of succeeding and advancing in your career. So you always want to understand how your work fits in with the bigger picture. Cool. So we're just coming up at the 30-minute mark. So I'm going to wrap up here in a couple of minutes. So yeah, so we looked at it as a timeline of things that you can do in the first few months, in the next few months, and then sort of like the year plus thing. But I want you to really think about it as a circle or as a cycle. So you join over here, on the right-hand side, and the first thing you want to do in the first 30 to 60 days is establish credibility. So you want to develop that trust with your team. You want to use this time to learn everything about the technology, and you want to also spend this time to learn about the team. You want to set up one-on-one meetings. You want to, excuse me, you want to get to know everyone. You want to get to know the problem domain, and you just want to come across as somebody that the team can trust with work. So if you're given something, you're able to turn around on that. The next several years are going to be about mastering that role, right? So you want to really hone that art of software development or hardware development or whatever it is that you really do. The more you advance in your career, the longer it may take. So if you're approaching this as a mid-career engineer, then mastering the role is probably going to take you a few years. If you're early in career, then mastering that role is probably going to take you just a year or two. And then you want to actively start, the moment you master your role, you want to start looking for growth opportunities. So like, hey, okay, I know this thing really well. How can I start asking for more complex work? And how can I start asking for more responsibility? And then you get promoted, which is the top little arrow over there. And then you again have to, go through this cycle again about establishing credibility in your new role, mastering it, and then again looking for growth opportunities. Cool. So that was all the content that I had. I'm going to take a quick break and let my throat rest. And then I'll jump into Q&A. Cool. So I'm going to start with the question that Mohammed asked about what are some examples to talk about in a meeting with a mentor. It depends on the mentor, depends on what you want from this relationship with your mentor. But I would recommend, at least for the first few meetings, coming with a specific issue or a specific problem. It's like, hey, I'm facing this. How would you navigate it? Or how do I go about something like this? And then that usually like leads to other things and other topics that you can riff off. You can ask for recommendations in terms of like, hey, can you recommend a book that you liked or a podcast that you liked? How do I start thinking the way you think, or what's going to make me better at XYZ? Those are some of the examples. Tips on avoiding the imposter syndrome. That's a question that that came in. Yeah, this is an interesting one, and I feel like everyone in their career will go through something like this. So that's the number one tip that I can share with you: is everyone is going through some version or some variant of their own imposter syndrome. It's really important to just focus on the fundamentals and deliver on those fundamentals. Once you get hired into a company, you've gotten hired into the company. Companies don't make mistakes when they hire people. And so you're in there, you're one of the team members, and you just want to focus on the fundamentals. If you're facing too much of it, you want to take a pause from focusing on career progression and career development. Maybe just go in and just focus on the fundamentals for a few months, and then come back to sort of like all this career point of view talk. I hope that helps. But there's also a lot of resources that I can send to out there on in terms of how to avoid the imposter syndrome and how do you navigate that. Cool. Here's another question. What are ways to stay motivated on my own personal projects after the initial novelty has worn off? I feel this. I have started a number of personal projects in my life that I haven't finished. I've started more projects than I've completed them. It's important to find an end goal for what your personal project is going to be, right? You don't want to have an open-ended project. You want to just approach it just like how you would found a startup, for example. It's like, hey, let me just find a product market fit, and then let me add this one feature. And then you want to have a good end goal in mind. You don't want it to be a perpetual personal project. That's how I have started to approach things. And once you know what success looks like, or once you know what an end state looks like, it's much easier. And once you have it clearly written down, it's much easier to stay motivated and get to that point, and then stop it, and then put a bow on it and be like, okay, I'm done with this personal project. Oh, this is a good one. So you said to not stay in the role you were hired in, like for example, a database dev. How would one not stagnate in their career and find ways to branch out? So there are a number of things that you can do. Most teams in today's world are multifaceted teams, or they're vertically integrated teams. So it's likely that you get hired into a team that's just database developers. But what's going to end up happening more often than not is you're going to be hired into a team that has a few database experts, a few networking experts, a few backend experts, a few front-end experts, and sort of or even if it's not your immediate team, maybe the team of teams is going to be responsible for an entire end-to-end product, which will have the same issue tracking system like Trello or Jira or what have you. So you want to express interest in signing up for other things. You want to go ahead and maybe pick up a little a bug fix or something that's not strictly in the discipline that you have been put into. And then if that's not working, you want to have you should probably have or you will have a standing one-on-one with your direct manager. You want to tell them that, hey, I want to I've had a good time doing this particular and specializing in this particular discipline. I want to venture out. I want to try out something else. I'm still early in career. And it's usually, if you have done a good job of whatever it is that you were originally hired to do, managers and teams are pretty receptive to putting people in different in situations where they can try out different things, really. So yeah, try it organically, to just branch out and pick up new issues. And if that doesn't work, just have a candid conversation with your manager and ask them to put you on a project that is different from what you have been doing so far. Cool. A related question from Amit. How do we know if the company is receptive to us changing roles within the company? New grad jobs have these job titles such as software engineer, backend, front-end, etc. If we have been selected for these jobs and want to change to networking, AI, etc., can we? You can, but there is a few caveats. You want to accomplish and you want to deliver the thing that you were hired for doing, first and foremost. So unless you do that, it's not going to be possible for you to branch out. So you want to spend maybe like at least a year or 2 years in mastering and delivering on the thing that you were hired to do. And from then on out, you want to branch out. Just give me a moment, please. I am back. Cool. People early in their careers may not know how to figure out whether a career or role is a good fit for them. What are some red flags to look out for that indicate that a job may not be a good fit for us? Yeah, this is a good one. It's somewhat related to the last two questions, I'd say. So if you, it's like an example that I would put in, that I would like to call out here is simply like, how a product finds a good product market fit, right? So you will succeed in your career when there's an intersection between what you want to do and what the company wants from you, right? It has to be both ways. It can't only be what the company wants from you. So you want to enjoy what you're working on. And if it's not, you will know that. And if it is, you will also know that, right? It's if you are in a discipline that you truly enjoy, it's a different feeling. You're super excited to get into work every day. You're learning every single day. You're seeking out information that advances your knowledge in a particular discipline. And if it's not a good fit, then you don't see all these things. It's work seems like a drag, where you're just going in and you're doing like the minimum required. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you're not actively growing or you're stagnating, you want to switch. You absolutely want to switch. It could be switching to a different role in the same company, in the same team, or just switching your job altogether. But you never want to be just slugging away at something because you're too afraid to get out of your comfort zone, for example. Where does being promoted to staff or senior engineer come into the timeline of career progression? Every company has different levels and guidelines that go along with these levels. I would recommend not focusing too much on the titles and not focusing too much on the timelines, and just continue getting better at sort of this circle of just really mastering your role. And if you do that, promotions and titles will automatically fall into place. You will have to go and ask for them, and you will have to go and be your own champion. Don't get me wrong; like they're not magically going to be falling in your lap. But I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to the specific leveling and promotion timelines, because they're so different from company to company. For example, startups have a pretty flexible, seniority scale. Everyone might just be a senior software engineer, or there may not even be titles. You could just be an engineer or a software engineer. And if you go to a more established company, then you'll have like 20 different grades that are that have subtle differences in between them. Great questions, though. Keep them coming. I have a couple of more minutes that I can hold on to. Cool. All right. Well, this was great. I have my email address here. If you want to get in touch with me after this talk, and I wish all of you best of luck, and hope that you're successful in your careers in this industry. Up here.